Hello everyone, and welcome to my Maya 2010 render passes tutorial. So in this tutorial what we're going to look into is build a rendering test room called a cornel box. It looks like this. Um, so basically it's very simple. It's geometry in the middle and just a room to enable light or any render attributes to bounce around or to be tested. So in part one, what we're going to look into is to model the scene. In part two, we're going to look into shading and applying different material attributes. And part three, we're going to start actually lighting and rendering, add some quite advanced rendering attributes to our scene. And in the last part, part four, we're going to get into the crunchy part and start doing render passes, which is basically a way to split our image into different single image that contains, let's say, for example, the diffuse, the reflectivity, the shadows, or specularity into different single images, and that way we can bring those back into a compositing package and start rebuilding this image with much more control. So let's get started with the modeling of this cornel box here. Alright, so we're going to start by creating a polygon cube. Scale that to 20. Let me go in shaded mode and hide this grid. Alright, so let's go in component face mode. Delete the front face so we have an opening for a room. And let's go ahead and select the top face and edit mesh, extrude. So what we're doing right now is simply creating a small light well or a hole for our light to go through and start bouncing around in our test room. So let me delete this face. Alright. Now one more thing I want to do is to extrude this room to create some depth. So we're going to go and edit mesh. Let's activate keep faces together and extrude. We're going to go along the z-axis and just push it a little bit like this, and as you can see, our room now has a little bit of depth. Alright, now let's go ahead and create a new polygon cube. Scale this to 4, and we're going to bring it down to the ground and just quickly place it around. Alright, let me go with a little more numbers here. Good. Now we're going to create another polygon cube. This time we're going to scale it slightly differently into a more, let's say, rectangular shape, as you can see. So I'm going to rotate it, pull it down. Okay. Now let's go in top view and place this into an interesting composition. Alright, I'm going to rotate it around, place it, this cube a little more forward. I like the angles. Alright, that's good. Now let's create one more object. This time it's going to be a torus. So create polygon torus. And the goal of this is just to have some interesting shapes in our scene, so it can react in different way or interesting ways to the lighting and rendering effects. So here I have my torus. Let me go in shaded mode. Just rotate it around, make it look interesting. Pull it down. That looks okay. Let's go in top view and make sure it's balanced. It is. Front view. It's slightly floating. That's good. Alright, we're set with our three basic objects. Now what I want to do is just add a little bit more complexity for shading purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this small cube in the front. Go into edit mesh, add a bevel to it. Right now you see it's a very wide bevel. So I'm going to lower the offset to a much smaller edge and add quite a few segments. There we go. That way we have a very smooth, beveled cube. That way it's going to catch some specularity and it's just going to be more interesting. This other cube here, what we're going to do is go into face mode once again, select everybody, and into our edit mesh, we're going to turn off the keep faces together and extrude. So let me scale that. And as you can see, each faces react independently and are being extruded um, each on each side separately. Alright, so let's do another extrude and push it along the z-axis. And as you can see, we're just creating a slightly more complex basic object. Alright, that looks good. So now I'm going to do one more operation to that cube, and to simply smooth it. Let me add quite a few subdivisions here. Okay, there we go. So now we have our torus cube that has a bevel just with a smoother edge, and our intricate little cube here. So that torus needs a little bit more subdivision. And since the room is so simple, we can go ahead and subdivide everything. Alright, so we have our basic scene setup done. I'm going to open my outliner and create our camera for this scene. So we're going to have a camera that's going to be locked in place. So create, cameras, camera. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is change the focal length to about 30. That way we're just going to have a slightly wider field of view in our camera. And I'm going to push it back to 35.5 like this. Let's look through it. There you go. You see we have a perfectly framed camera for our scene. Now I'm going to go into view, camera settings, enable resolution gate. That way we see the image resolution within our scene, and right now it's set to 640 by 480, and that's wrong. I would like to have a more square image, so I'm just going to go in the render globals under common image size, change it to 1K square. You see the viewport updated, and now we have a perfectly framed corner box with a 1K rendering image. Okay, now one last thing we need to do is to create our light. I'm going to pick a area light simply because it tries to mimic physical world, real world physical attributes, and that's what we want. So I'm going to pull it up, rotate it to -90 degrees so it shoots down, and go into front view and be able to place it properly in our little light well. Alright, now let's go to top view and scale it up. Okay, we're back to our perspective. Alright, that looks good. So let's look through a camera again, and now we're going to do one render. So I bring up the render view and render camera 1. There we go. So this is our first render. The modeling of our very simple scene is done. So in part 2, what we're going to look into is to start applying different shader materials and start at the actual rendering part of it. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in part 2 for shading and starting the lighting. Thank you.